talk about stitch selection for the G1212. When you're looking at your reference panel on the front, there you'll notice that there's two different types of stitches. There's the top ones in gray, which are your utility stitches, and then there's the bottom ones in red, which are the knit stitches. If you're going to do one of your utility stitches, well, before you change anything, it's really important to know to have your needle all the way up in the highest position. So if I'm going to select a C stitch, I'm going to turn my selector dial all the way to C. So when I sew, it's going to sew this zigzag. To adjust the length, I'm going to address length better in another video, but for this purpose, all you need to know is the length needs to be in the gray area between 0 to 4. So if I sew now, I will sew this zigzag stitch out. To do any of your knit stitches, you turn this length dial all the way to SS for stretch stitch in red. So if I was to actually sew right now, I would be sewing this rickrack stitch down here. Here's a tip to use when you're sewing with your stretch stitches. Depending on the fabric and the thread you're using, your stitch may not be stitching out the way you'd like it to. There is a feature on this machine you can make the adjustment, and it's right here. So when you're on the stretch stitches, you'll notice that there is a plus and a minus on either side. So you can actually turn it to the minus to create less space between your stitching, or turn it to the plus to create more space between your stitching. And I stitched out a sample so that you can see the difference. The middle row of stitching would be the optimal stitch of what I think the stitch should look like. The top one, I've turned the dial all the way to the minus to take out the space between the stitches. And then the bottom stitching sample is I've turned the dial all the way to the plus to make more space between the stitches. So before you stitch this out, it'd be a great idea to do a sample, and that way you can make sure that you have the stitch balanced perfectly before you sew.